Good evening, everyone in Alberta, Canada, and beyond. It is Wednesday, June 19th, 2024. And I'm Kerry Lambert, and I welcome you to an evening of solutions for a new Alberta brought to you by the Alberta Prosperity Project, also known as APP. APP's purpose is to educate, inspire, and unite all Albertans, businesses, and organizations to protect their prosperity, individual freedoms, rights, and self-determination by empowering the Alberta government to restructure Alberta's relationship within or without Canada. Of course, we couldn't do this without your help. If you can, please share this webinar. APP is membership driven with a goal of 1 million plus members to help steer the political process. And you can find out more by going to our revised website. And it is at albertaprosperityproject.com. Lots of information on there. We're going to be talking with one of the authors of one of the reports on here. Again, APP memberships are 1 year for $20, 2 years for $30, 3 years for $40, or you can make a donation at albertaprosperityproject.com. We also have our Support 5 initiative, which basically says 555. Please spend 5 minutes a week on social media, liking, sharing, or commenting on our posts. Recruiting 5 new supporters monthly. Of course, that grows our community strength and reach and network. And if you can, do a $5 monthly donation to fuel our initiatives, empowering us to plan effective and push forward, plan effectively, I guess, and push forward towards our goals. We've got quite a few things going on even during the summer. We've got our door knocking campaign that's starting up. We are still doing our, actually, it's the Alberta First Pension Plan Tour. I was just in Barrhead last week and with Tanner Today and Corey Morgan from the Western Standard, and we discussed the pension and what it would mean for Alberta independence. It was an amazing evening, and I do recommend that if there is an Alberta First Pension meeting somewhere near you, please go, and you can find out what is going on by going to, actually, you can find out a couple. One, you can go to the Alberta First Pension .site, Alberta First Pension.ca. Let's see, do I have a little banner for that? I think I do somewhere. There we go, albertafirstpension.ca. And the other one that you can go to and find out what is going on in your area is just freedomcalendar.net. I don't think I need to put a banner on for that. You guys can read that, or just freedomcalendar.net. That is put together through our buddy Max, and lots of information, lots of events going on in the summer. As well, like right into September and October. So there's a lot of stuff. I don't want to bore you with any of that because you guys are here not to hear about that. You're here about tonight's special guest. Our guest tonight is, of course, Dr. Dennis Modry. He's the past CEO of the APP and heart surgeon, among many, many other talents. And tonight's episode is called A Dose of Truth. And that is a little bit of a pun based upon I'm just going to jump to this one here, if I can find it quick. What the event that happened on Monday that the UCP Calgary Lougheed chapter put on, called An Injection of Truth. They had tons of, I'll say, world-renowned doctors for sure, and some great speeches by the doctors. Again, if you want to find out more about that, you can, I know it's been reposted on a few places. I know if you go back to an injection of truth.ca, you can probably find it there, or just self-promotion. You go to the Chris Carey Show. Go to thechriscarey.com and you can find it there. We've got it linked up on there. It's through Rumble and YouTube. We also have it going out to Spotify and where else? Apple, and a whole bunch of other things. So even if you just don't want to hear it or just not view it, you can still hear it on those other streams. So go check that out. And the reason that we want to talk about this as an injection of truth, it's a dose of truth, is because our guest wrote this particular article on this page, the albertaprosperityproject.com. If you go here, I think it's the one linked with the picture itself. Of course, if you're viewing this months from now, you won't see it, but it is this particular link, and it's the scientific, legal, and political rationale recommended for modifying the AHS consent for COVID-19 immunization form. So basically, it's the AHS consent form for the COVID-19 immunization. And with that, I'm going to bring on Dr. Modry. Dr. Modry, how are you doing this evening?
I'm excellent, Carrie. Nice to see you.
And nice to see you too. Always great to have a conversation with you. So we all know that you were the CEO of the Alberta Prosperity Project. I think we know that you were a brilliant heart surgeon. You performed the first heart transplant in 1985, and the first combined heart and both lungs in 1986. But something I just found out from you today was that you did a postdoctorate in immunology at Stanford.
Well, yeah, that is correct. And the reason why I did that was because as the director of the heart and lung transplant program for nearly 30 years, it was important for me to have a very clear understanding of immunosuppression and the body's immune response and how we can control it. Mm-hmm. And this was invaluable for me as the director of the critical care unit as well, and working in conjunction with the University of Alberta infectious disease specialists as well. Mm-hmm. So this gave me the insight that I needed. And you might recall, Carrie, when the mandates first came out in 2020, that I had written a couple of articles towards the end of 2020, which were open letters to the premier as well, yep. Which none of the evidence could be refuted, or was refuted, in fact, in those two articles. And so here we are today. And where do you want to go with this?
Well, why don't we jump into? Well, first of all, you wrote this article. So what was the rationale behind the article?
Sure.
Obviously, because I should have maybe said, and maybe I did say, sometimes I just rattle on too fast, you co-authored this particular
right.
document.
I drafted it and co-authored it, but I had input from several other individuals, 4 other scientists, and 2 constitutional lawyers, and 1 individual who's the VP of Policy and Governance on the UCP Board of Directors. And we split up the authorship this way on the article. As you can see, there's a scientific authorship and there's a legal and political authorship there. So it was important to the scientists that they not be associated with the legal and political authorship, because they didn't have any knowledge or insight particularly of Alberta politics, except for Ray Strom and the 2 lawyers, of course, and myself. So, but the genesis of this article, and this, by the way, was completely independent of the injection of truth town hall that occurred on Monday. Yeah. So this is entirely separate, and it started separately and was unassociated. So the genesis of it was that on December the 12th, I had a meeting with the Minister of Health for about an hour and a half in her office. And we touched on a number of subjects, but she posed a question. Sorry?
That's Adriana LaGrange.
Adriana LaGrange, yeah. And she posed a question to me, and that was, did I have any concern about the presence of plasmid DNA in the vials that were being used to inject people, with respect to the potential of protecting them against the COVID-19 virus or the transmission of it. And I said, well, I would be concerned if I was aware of the potential for the plasmid DNA to get into the nucleus and change one's DNA. So in other words, the essence of you as a person is what's coded in your DNA. And if that changes, then conceivably there is an alteration that could have detrimental effects.
Oh, for sure.
And so I asked her, I said, would you like me to investigate it and get back to you? And she said, yes, she would. So I did that. And in the course of the investigation, it was evident that Joe Ladapo, the Surgeon General in Florida, had advised the medical community to put a pause on the administration of modified mRNA injections, and which is basically what has been termed the COVID-19 vaccine.
Mm-hmm.
And that wasn't good enough for me. I wanted to talk to the scientists that made the recommendation. And so that I did. I did speak to the scientists specifically. And starting in January, we had several Zoom meetings. And eventually we brought in 2 lawyers and Ray Strom into the conversation, because what was evident to me was that, and I should tell you that early in January, when I had enough information, I did give Adriana and the Premier a call, and actually I texted the Premier, I didn't call her. But I did call Adriana, and I said, yeah, there is some concern about this, and it would be wise to get ahead of the curve on this one. But let me put something together that makes sense. And when I texted the Premier on the same piece of information, or the information that I had become aware of, I suggested to her that I would put together something, and that she also would be wise to get ahead of this, because the way the public will respond to this could be quite negative over time, and it would be helpful to get ahead of it. And she said to me in the text that, well, people are already voting with their arms, and at that point there was only a 16% uptake with the vaccine, but this was early in January, so 16% uptake still seemed pretty significant to me if we're talking at the beginning of the year. So I had these numerous meetings with the scientists, and we went over in detail the science that was of concern. And the major concern, of course, that was discovered was the not just the presence of plasmid DNA in the vials, but also the presence of simian virus 40 fragments in the vials, and also the potential for what is called miscoding with messenger RNA. So messenger RNA codes for proteins that the DNA wants coded for. And so when there's frame shifting occurring, this modified mRNA can instruct the ribosomes to create protein that is aberrant. And we don't know anything about what these aberrant proteins are doing. So we've got the plasmid DNA, which we now know can get into the can modify one's DNA, and we know that the SV40 enhancer, the simian virus, has been associated with oncogenesis and numerous other autoimmune problems as well. And what was always first and foremost in my mind was cause and effect, and I particularly was pushing the scientists to tell me, well, is there hard evidence to link these various entities, the plasmid DNA, the simian virus 40 enhancer, and frame shifting, to cause these problems? And the weight of the evidence strongly suggests that there needs to be concern in these particular areas. And so as a result of this concern, what should be done about it? Now, if you're a leader of a province, as Danielle is, and you believe in choice, you're a libertarian and you believe in choice. I believe in choice as well.
Yeah.
But choice should always be predicated on sufficient knowledge to make that choice.
Yeah.
And the current consent form that AHS has on their website is deficient in terms of providing information. Now, I'm not going to blame AHS at this stage because the information is incomplete. What I'm suggesting now is that there is new information that wasn't available when the consent form was designed, and that the consent form very significantly should be added to with the new information. So not only did I, along with the co-authors, draft the article, the scientific, legal, and political rationale recommended for modifying the AHS Consent for COVID-19 Immunization form, but we also gave them a second form, which are the suggested additions to the AHS consent form. And so those additions, if it serve a couple of purposes. So for example, what they do is they preserve, for one thing, something that's very important, and that is choice. Okay, so choice is not eliminated, but in addition to that, that individuals clearly understand that their choice is associated with both the potential for good as well as for harm, and that the Alberta government is demonstrably acting in the best interests of the public by providing them that additional information. And then finally, for people who are public health nurses or pharmacists or physicians who are part of the process of administering these agents, these COVID-19 or the COVID-19 variant injections, that they are not held liable if harm should occur, which also protects the government in a way in which they may not be protected in the future. And this is quite important, actually, from, if you're a government official, and I know there are people out there that might say, well, we want everybody to be held accountable.
Yeah.
Well, part of the problem with holding everybody accountable before this new information was available is that it wasn't available previously when the authorities, the political authorities, advanced the injections. And although there may be some pushback on that, justifiably, the reality is if you want to change something that government has been doing, you have to give them new information, because there's no way they're going to want to be held liable for anything that happened in the past.
Yeah.
But moving forward and protecting kids as well as adults from the potential harm that may occur, I'm not saying will occur, but may occur from these injections, then it seems prudent for the government to make AHS change the consent form, which, like I said, will protect the public, and it will protect the providers of these injections, and indirectly it will also protect the government. And from a legal jeopardy point of view, there are already 3 class action lawsuits that are underway to be launched. So the fact that there is jeopardy is reflected, for example, in the fact that the federal government has already paid or approved $36 million to pay for harms that have occurred. So there's already acknowledgement of the harm. But then there's the political aspect of all of this too, Carrie, and that is that, if whether you support the UCP or not, the reality is that the last election was very close. It was decided by something like 2,700 votes in Calgary or something along those lines. And I think that the UCP government has political jeopardy if they don't do something about this. And why I say that is because, armed with the knowledge, as the public becomes more and more aware of the harm that can occur as a result of the presence of plasmid DNA in the vials, as a result of the SV40 promoter in the vials, the simian virus promoter fragments of the virus in the vial, and the problem of frame shifting producing proteins that are, we have no idea what they're doing. But when you put it all together with, the number of cancers that have occurred and the autoimmune disease and the myocarditis and Guillain-Barré syndrome and various other things, the public is not stupid, but more and more are being informed and are becoming educated. And if they feel as though the government is not acting in their best interest from a health perspective, they may well not vote for them in the next election.
You're right.
And so if you're conservative in your thinking and you want less government, less governance, less regulation, and less taxation, you may well be faced with a socialist government come the next election based on this one issue alone. And so this, therefore, was the genesis of drafting the particular document that it has been sent to the Premier and to Adriana, and it's also been sent to individuals that are working for the government with respect to the COVID-19 and what they need to be doing about it in the future. So I don't want to identify everybody here. I'm just identifying who it's been sent to for the time being, as well as to our many thousands of members of the Alberta Prosperity Project.
Oh, that's right, because we did send that in the weekly newsletter, as well as, of course, like I showed at the beginning, that it's posted on the Alberta Prosperity Project.com website. So I do advise everyone to at least take a look at it. I'll be one of those guys that says I read through it, and with the science, I didn't really understand a lot of it, but I guess I don't have to, right? I mean, we have professionals like you, and that's kind of what I've also heard from many different sides, saying we got to trust the science, trust the experts. And of course, I'm definitely trusting you. You're a good friend of ours, and we've got a history, and I totally am on side with what you say. And even with reading that, even with reading that, I do want to go back to just a couple of quick questions when you were talking about how you were getting involved with this right from the get-go. And one of them was, you were saying that it had the simian virus 40 in there. It has the plasmid DNA. Was that, how did we find that out? Was it reversed engineered? Was it actually given to us on a document that says this is what's actually in there?
Well, two things. For one thing, the plasmid DNA, the regulatory authorities require that there not be more than 10 nanograms of plasmid DNA in a vial.
Okay.
And so David Spiker, along with Kevin McKernan and others, have discovered that there is plasmid DNA in the vials, and it falls into appropriate regulatory levels as measured by PCR, that's polymerase chain reaction.
Okay.
However, if you understand that intralipid nanoparticles help facilitate getting DNA into a cell, what wasn't measured was the plasmid DNA encapsulated in the interlipid nanoparticles, which are kind of like fat bubbles, if you will. And when you measure the amount of plasmid DNA using a different technique, it's called fluorometry, you find that the levels exceed the regulatory level by tens to hundreds of times.
Okay.
And so this poses a very significant potential risk that the plasmid DNA, particularly along with SV40, simian virus promoter, can facilitate the entrance of this plasmid DNA getting into the cell nucleus and altering the cell nucleus, the DNA, I should say. So that is the concern. In addition to that, using the Freedom of Information access technology and also the access to information and privacy, it turns out that the federal government has now acknowledged the presence of plasmid DNA and SV40 promoter, which Pfizer knew was in the vials, but failed to disclose it. So think of this. They failed to disclose it. Now, I think just a word about simian virus 40, I think is relevant here. Vaccines that polio vaccines that were used in I guess it was in the late 50s, they were contaminated with this virus called simian virus, or SV40. It was present in monkey kidney cells that were used to grow the vaccine. Okay. And then the investigators eventually found that they found this SV40 virus particles in cancers, in several types of cancers: mesothelioma, osteosarcoma, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, various types of neurological cancers, etc. And so the issue of cause and effect hasn't been clearly defined, but there is more recent evidence that is suggestive of cause and effect. So at the very least, one's antenna should be up and say, well, gee, if plasmid DNA is at levels higher than it should be, if simian 40 virus particles are present, and if frame shifting can occur because of copying mRNA instructions to the ribosomes to produce proteins, then maybe we should investigate this further. Okay, and so that's part of the recommendations, because I have 4 recommendations at the end of the article. If you want to bring it up again, we'll just get the 4 recommendations at the end. Right. So first recommendation was to ensure that all Albertans who receive a modified mRNA injection in the future, including boosters, sign an accurate waiver, which is a revised AHS Consent Form, acknowledging that they are aware of new and substantiated evidence of the potential harm that may arise from their decision to proceed with the inoculation. Number 2, modify the current AHS Consent Form, or Consent for COVID-19 Immunization Form, as recommended in the second document. And number 3, meet with the scientific, legal, and political co-authors if clarification is required. And I would even add further to that. I would say meet with the scientists and any of the other authors, along with scientists who have an opposing view. So one of the problems that occurred with the government prior to Danielle Smith is Jason Kenney just listened to one narrative. He never allowed caucus to listen to an alternative narrative. And if you're making decisions, you need to hear more than one perspective. Science is an area that demands questioning.
Absolutely.
It demands proof upon proof upon proof. And then finally, the fourth consideration was that they might want to consider funding research to ensure the safety of these modified RNA injections on behalf of Albertans. Because, Carrie, one of the things that's coming is there are hundreds of new vaccines, quote unquote vaccines, that are being developed based on the modified mRNA technology.
Mm-hmm.
And the one that's coming out this fall is for respiratory syncytial virus. And I mean, if I was to advise my children's children, since I'm a grandparent now, I would advise them not to proceed with the respiratory syncytial virus if it's based on modified mRNA technology. And you know, I mean, it is kind of maddening to those of us who don't have an axe to grind with respect to, you know, scientists want to be ahead of the curve with their science and doing good things. But when they have motivations that are other than what is in the best interest of the public, that is of concern. And the easy way to deal with that is look at the counter narratives to the evidence that they're providing. But we do have another problem in that regard as well, and that is that it is difficult when the major publications are denying publication of articles that are going against the conventional narrative, and that never really happened in the past.
No.
So this is all new information. So, you know, and again, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but you've got to ask the question, you know, what is the motivation for publications for various journals and the mainstream media to not provide an alternative perspective? So. Yeah.
So here's another question. Of course, the whole conversation is about here's the legal, the scientific, political reasons for changing the form. Here's the form. I'm going to call up the form just so that we know what we're talking about here.
Sure.
You don't necessarily have to go through it verbatim or anything like that, but that's just the form. This is the form that if you're going to go through and get COVID-19 immunization, you're supposed to be signing this. I don't know. Quite honest.
This is the form.
Okay.
This is your consent form for COVID-19 immunization. But as I say, it is deficient in a number of ways. And so we try to fix that deficiency with the recommendations.
So if I went to my local drugstore and said that I wanted to get a COVID-19 shot, this is the form that I would end up filling out?
Yes.
Okay. So then I'm just going to backtrack a little bit. So I have two full-grown daughters, and if you can think back to when your kids were born too, you know, there's a lot of scrambling going on. Babies, there's a baby. You're all of a sudden a dad. You're supposed to fill out some forms. I really don't even remember filling out any forms for my daughters in terms of immunization. Do they do that now? And do they actually specify them to be, say, a tuberculosis form, or do they? Like, I'm not even sure exactly what we are signing up for at the time. But I mean, that to me is kind of like, well, do we get a whole bunch of different forms? And they go, yes, 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 because again, pre-COVID, I probably wouldn't even have taken the time to sign it because it was like, yeah, everybody else is doing it, so I guess I'll just go ahead and do it as well.
Well, I think there was a point in the past where individuals who were signing for diphtheria, measles, rubella, chickenpox, etc., probably didn't have to sign anything. It was, you know, either sign it, or either take it or don't take it. You know, it was really sort of that simple. So I'm not sure about, and I didn't look into this at all, Carrie, as to what the requirements are now for many of the other common vaccines that have been proven safe.
Yes.
You know, and
Because they've got 50-year history on them.
Yeah, exactly. It's you know, they're because they've been proven safe. But still, you know, in this era of litigation, which we're now in, I wouldn't be surprised if virtually every vaccine now requires a consent form. Doesn't
Yes.
matter even if it's you know, the traditional ones that have been proven.
Yeah, I know even at the event on Monday, Dr. Byron Bridle even said, you know, we've basically been going through this. Yeah, we'll sign forms, we'll get the shots, and now he's questioning whether or not they did proper trials. And so he would like to go back to each one of these and say, okay, well, if I'm taking TB, I want to see the trials on this and get another check mark on this as an example. Do you think that's worth the effort?
Well, I think the effort now needs to be very targeted at the concerns that have been raised as a result of the current investigations, the new investigations, particularly around the effect of the plasma DNA, the effect of the SV40 promoter, and frame shifting. I think this should be investigated, because if you prove cause and effect, and like I say, there's some recent studies that seem to implicate cause and effect. But whether it's one or two studies that implicate cause and effect, science requires multiple verification to say, okay, there is cause and effect here. But there's enough concern right now that these specific areas need to be investigated. I think it would, you know, if you make an assumption that the trials were insufficient, and they were insufficient in many respects, yeah, you could make an argument that Dr. Bridle suggests that repeat clinical trials should be carried out. But the problem is with that, at what risk to the people who are in the trial? Okay. And knowing what we now know with respect to the contamination in those vials, and the various ways in which genetic change can occur, alterations of your DNA can occur, I think that needs to be investigated before any further trials are conducted, including, and I imagine the respiratory syncytial virus trials are being conducted right now, if the intention is to launch the modified mRNA injections for respiratory syncytial virus in the fall. They're probably ongoing right now, and they'll carry on afterwards. But not nearly enough time has elapsed, mainly because we're seeing now so many of the complications, the increased death rates that have been well defined in the UK data, for example. So I would be not necessarily in favor of carrying out clinical trials until this other information is cleared up.
So with this paper, is your hope that our Premier Daniel Smith will pause this, or just basically say it's up to informed consent, and the parents or the person getting the injection, it's up to them to take responsibility for their own action? And the reason I'm asking it that way is because there's a lot of people that have been coerced into getting these shots. The media is definitely saying you got to do this because we've seen the Pfizer commercials, the Moderna commercials out there. People are afraid of losing their jobs, especially with the stressed economy right now. So would it be wise for her to just say it's up to you? Or would it be better just to say, you know what, we're going to take a 6-month moratorium or whatever amount of time, and we're going to investigate this?
All right. So That's a good question. So let me answer the question this way. I believe in choice as well.
Mm-hmm.
But let me repeat what I said earlier for clarification. Choice must be predicated on, sufficient information upon which one can make that choice. So my recommendation to the Premier is that they modify the consent form and ensure that whoever is administering, or rather, if it's a physician that's suggesting that the patient go and get a COVID-19 injection, that it's incumbent on that physician to document that he or she has informed the patient adequately and taken them through every step of the consent form before they sign it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, one of the problems here is that many physicians and nurses are unaware of this new information. Okay, so this would serve a second purpose, and that is educating the physician.
Mm-hmm.
Similarly, nurses and pharmacists who are required to, or who are charged with the responsibility of administering these, also have a duty to take them through the consent, an individual patient through a consent form.
That's right.
Every step serves two purposes. It educates the pharmacist and it educates the public health nurse, as well as it educates the patient. Okay. And then if the patient wants to take the COVID-19 injection, then they have been informed. And if they or their dependent minor for whom they've signed the consent form develops a complication, it is on them.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Because they've signed it. What would I like to see? I would like to see a pause until such time as the new evidence has been further investigated.
Yeah.
That's what I'd like to see, but I'm not going to tell the public that that's what should happen. That's not what I'm going to suggest to the Premier, that's what should happen, because I believe even more strongly in choice. Mm-hmm. But what will I tell my children and my grandkids? I will suggest to them strongly that they shouldn't take it.
Yeah. Well, that's good advice, because I'm kind of siding with you for sure. And it's I'm certainly not anti-vax. I've had, you name it, for traveling, Twinrex. I've had the Shingrix, and I'm sure there'll be some people typing stuff up. Oh, I wouldn't take that. And I did it because at the time I knew so many people that, or specifically for, say, Shingrix, I knew so many people that were under 50 that had shingles, and it was painful, and it basically put them out for a week or two, and I just didn't want to be in that situation. So I did what I thought was research, which was more just looking at the pamphlet for it, right? And said, these are the percentages and blah, 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 the marketing stuff. And I went ahead and did it. And I'm still living by my choice, because so far, knock on wood, I'm all good, right? And I was more concerned because there did seem to be, and again, this was not necessarily hearsay, but it was documented, but the stories that I had heard was that people, when they ended up getting their COVID shot, they would develop these issues within a couple of days, maybe even a couple of weeks. And so to me, it was like, well, I'm going to sit back and I'm just going to wait and see what's going on. And so for me, I'm again, I'm not telling anybody what to do, but for my own personal knowledge, I think I made the right choice. So that's kind of
Kerry, but it's not just early problems; it's late problems. One of the big concerns is oncogenesis, cancer formation, and there's two mechanisms there. One is the spike protein itself can interfere with gene P53, which is a cancer suppression gene. And similarly, SV40 can do that as well. And so if you're suppressing an oncogenic, or if you're suppressing a gene that prevents cancer formation, it's more likely that cancer will occur. And that seems to be occurring. And so further investigations are ongoing in this particular area as well. So cause and effect, possibly, but certainly there seems to be strong correlation.
Yeah. So yeah, I would suggest anyone that's watching go on to the AlbertaProsperityProject.com website and take a look for. Let's see if I can go back to that again. Take a look for the article on the scientific, legal, and political rationale. Click on that. Take a good read of it, and then, if anything, you'll be a little bit more wise as to what the actual rationale is. And then, in terms of the actual form changes, so is there wording that you've suggested in order to change the form or make it longer?
Yeah, I have. Did I send that to you, Carrie, that you can bring up?
I'm not sure. Is that the? I'm going to put one up here. I think that's
suggested edition. No,
there's the edition. No,
it's
this one here.
This is the one.
Yeah. Okay, perfect.
So why don't we just very briefly just go through this? And
sure.
So the point that I want to start off by saying that each one of the references justifies these statements. Okay. And you can look at these references. So when we say may not prevent illness due to the virus SARS-CoV-2 has not been shown to prevent illness and may not currently prevent the transmission, this is further supported in very recent Senate testimony by the head of the FDA, Marks, and Jernigan, head of the CDA, answering the question, yes, it may not prevent illness, it may not prevent transmission either. In addition, it may not reduce the symptoms of a COVID-19 illness. Number 4, in fact, it may increase the risk of SARS-CoV infection with repeated booster doses. That was a very interesting study. Just scroll down just a little bit if you can.
Sure.
For
yeah.
me.
A little bit more?
No, that's good. And so you can look at that data, and it may contain, as you know, because we've been talking about this, plasmid DNA for which the risk to human health has not been fully clarified, but may contribute to tumor formation or other illnesses, may contain DNA quantities above regulatory guidelines, which may be prothrombotic forming, may make unintended proteins with unknown possible toxic side effects. That's the problem with frame shifting.
Yeah.
So scroll down. So these are references.
Yeah.
And then we'll get to, for that page. Now, number 7, currently known to be associated with the following: 1 in 10%, rare 1 in 1,000 or very rare risks of lymphadenopathy, myocarditis, pericarditis, Bell's palsy, anaphylaxis. Number 8, and the references are there. May have other side effects or complications which are not yet known or fully understood due to the novel and recent nature of the development of modified mRNA vaccines, particularly since vaccines have not undergone long-term testing. The mechanisms underlying their actions on the body are still unknown, and adverse events may not be identified as such due to conflicting and incomplete data. These may include, but are not limited to, inflammatory and autoimmune adverse effects in pregnancy and breastfeeding, blood clots and cardiac adverse effects, neurologic adverse effects. And then I won't get into 9 to, just scroll down, 9, 10, 11, and 12. What these have to do with are the product monographs, okay? And what's actually in the monograph should inform you of the concerns. So we highlight these in taken right out of the monographs. And then scroll down some more. And basically what you're saying is you acknowledge that not all physicians are fully educated on the potential risks of modified mRNA inoculations, and that you acknowledge and fully accept the potential benefits and risks of any modified mRNA injection, and freely and without coercion make this choice to proceed on behalf of myself or my dependent minor. So your name, your signature, the date, if it's a dependent minor you're signing for, who's witnessed it, who was the vaccine administrator, and the date of the administration. So this is what we're recommending should be added to the informed consent. Now, Alberta government lawyers can take this material and they can put it in the form of legalese that they wish to put it in. But this has been run by two lawyers, Brian Heck and Leighton Gray. That's pretty much it. And so I'm not saying don't take the vaccine. I'm saying modify the consent form so that people understand the new evidence and what the potential risks are.
Yeah, and it's funny. I hate using that word, but like it's funny because initially when we were told to take the vaccine, they were saying it's one and done, maybe two. You'll never catch it again, and it's not going to spread, and basically that's what these first two things are. So people have very short memories when they did take it, and then all of a sudden people were still getting sick, or that they were still transmitting it. They came up with, oh yeah, well, we know that it wasn't going to do that, but yet when this all happened, we were told, no, this is exactly the way it is. So I actually think these first two would quickly dismissed by people that are just like, oh yeah, I know that. That's not a big deal to me. But I think it's the other ones that, in terms of reducing the symptoms, and especially the plasma DNA and toxic effects. I mean, if I saw that on a form, I would really question, what am I taking?
Well, Kerry, if you look at point number 3, may increase the risk with repeated booster doses. So that data is solid.
That's
the more boosters you have, the more injections of COVID-19 gene-altering treatment or potential gene-altering treatment, the greater the probability you'll get COVID-19 or a variant of it. So I would predict that if the provincial government and the Premier and the Minister of Health wish to modify or do modify the consent form, I would predict thereafter 95% of people that are going in for an injection of a modified mRNA vaccine, purported vaccine, won't proceed with it.
And so again, I'll just bring that the recommendations up. So here it's for COVID-19, but basically this would be the form for any mRNA type of vaccine, right?
That is correct. But again, some of the other companies may completely ensure that whether you're measuring plasma DNA by PCR or by fluorometry, that it falls within the regulatory guidelines. Other modified mRNA technology may eliminate simian virus 40 being present, and other may prove that frame shifting is not occurring. It's just that it hasn't been shown yet. And given the risks and given the massive number of reported cases of various types of harm and deaths that seem to be well correlated with the mRNA injections, it seems prudent, very prudent, for the government to get ahead of this and provide an appropriate consent form. And in the future, modified mRNA injections may be brilliant. They may reduce the time of a new virus or bacteria that is life-threatening to a large percentage of the population. May save the population. But right now, the there is insufficient evidence on the safety profile based on the 3 points that I've made. The plasma DNA 340
will
and
you answer a question? And I know someone out there is going to be thinking about it anyways. So we've heard that there is potential for a new bird flu coming this fall, and they're already working on an mRNA vaccine for it. Recommend or not recommend?
Well, if it's based on mRNA technology and they haven't proven the absence of plasma DNA, simian virus 40, and that frame shifting hasn't occurred, my answer would be they should not approve it.
Okay, that's
no.
good.
I don't care if some jurisdictions in the world want to approve it, because it's going to be pushed by the FDA, the CDA, the NIH, the World Health Organization, and the mainstream media.
Yeah.
But just get back to principles. Just get back to principles. Say if we're going to accept a new vaccine, mRNA vaccine for bird flu, prove to me that there isn't plasma DNA that exceeds regulatory requirements. Prove to me that simian virus 40 promoter is not in there, and prove to me that frame shifting is not occurring, in which proteins of unknown potential toxic effect aren't there.
How long would those trials, if they needed to actually prove that, how long would it take for them to prove that?
I don't think it would take all that long to prove it. Science is advancing in just exponentially. I mean, it's just unbelievable for me, who has a very strong side. I've published hundreds of articles, and at the end of the day, I love to see this advance, but I want to see the advance occur safely. I think there were other motivations for pushing these viruses, possibly other motivations. But I like to give everybody the benefit of the doubt and say it was altruistic, and they wanted to help people, but in their zeal to move things along as rapidly as they did, there were some things that were overlooked. And I can assure you it's, and I know there's litigation occurring now with respect to, the Pfizer is being sued, Moderna is being sued, everybody's being sued. AstraZeneca has taken their COVID-19 vaccine completely off the market. There's more that's going to come out. But like I say, I don't want to live in the past. I want to live in the future. And the future is deal with these issues, this new information, and inform the public of this new information, that there are potential harms, and define them in your modified immunization form. Modify that immunization form. What have you got to lose? You have nothing to lose and everything to gain. And if you're wrong and you don't do it, you put yourself, the government puts themselves at risk, and everybody else that was involved with the injection of these and providing the information to the public. So if you provide misinformation or insufficient information, you're at risk. Don't take the risk.
There's a few questions here. I'm just going to put them up, and some of them are yes and no's, and some will be a discussion. But here's one from Janet. She says, has Dr. Modry addressed the AHS vaccination schedule for young children, or is he hoping that the consent form would be a pause for parents? I think we kind of talked about that.
I think there's zero justification for the administration of the vaccination from COVID-19 for young children. I mean, other countries have already pulled it and are not providing it for young children. But I think in this, if you believe in choice, and I do believe in choice, like I say, put put it in, make it clear in the consent form. I think it would even be better if for young children, certainly under 12, I would go further. I'd say under 21, that they shouldn't be required to take it at all ever. There's a corollary here as well, and it's something we didn't touch on, but it's in the main document that I wrote, and that is refusal to take any mRNA injection should never be associated with any restriction of your civil liberties.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I was going to get to that too, in terms of course, we had heard from Dan Hartman, whose son Sean passed away. He basically wanted to play hockey so bad that he took the COVID vaccine, and about 3 weeks later he died in his sleep. And there's still not even investigation. It's pretty much confirmed that that's what did it. So I guess if you don't take something, you don't take a vaccine in order to play hockey or be involved in something, is there anything that we can do right now? Like, or is it like, well, I guess I'm not playing hockey this year? Like, is there any sort of legal ramifications? You know?
Well, I'm not a lawyer, so I won't answer the legal ramifications. But if you just know the Senate testimony from Marks and Jernigan from the FDA and the CDA, if you understand what they said, then there would be no justification for taking the vaccine to play hockey, because what they said is it doesn't prevent COVID-19 and it doesn't prevent the transmission. So why take it?
Yeah. Here's another question from Diana. What do you think of the updated COVID vax at spikevax.com? I see they're pushing this now in the doctor's office. I can't make a comment because I don't even know what that is.
Spikevax really refers to the Moderna mRNA vaccine product monograph. Okay. And you could bring that up. I mean, that I showed that in the consent form, but I said, well, we won't bother reviewing that right now. Okay. But basically, that's their terminology. Pfizer uses Comirnaty. Yeah, that's easy for me to say. So not this document, the other one. Yeah. So scroll down. Keep going. Oh,
yes, the 910. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So the U.S. product monograph is Comirnaty. Okay, it's the name of the approved COVID-19 Pfizer brand insert. The Canadian product monograph is this one. Just keep going down. We'll get the Spikevax, because Spikevax is here it is. This is the Canadian. So Spikevax refers to the Moderna product. It's the name for the approved COVID-19 Moderna brand insert. And just like it says here, available data on Spikevax administered pregnant women are insufficient to inform vaccine-associated risks in pregnancy. It's not being evaluated for carcinogenic, mutagenic, potential, or impairment of male fertility in animals. The safety and efficacy in children have not been evaluated. This is right in the product monograph, the most recent one. Yeah. The Canadian one, same thing. Has not been evaluated for carcinogenicity in animals, as carcinogenicity studies were not considered relevant to this vaccine. Hang on, I think the problem is I need some blueberry juice.
Okay.
So this is the material that is in the product monographs right now. So if you see this in the product monograph, and they're telling you that there are potential problems here, and it's coming right out of the horse's mouth, as it were, would it not give you pause?
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
So now the additional material that is provided on top of this is new information that they haven't included yet. on those 3 points: the plasmid DNA, the simian virus 40, and also the frame shifting. So, but that will be coming as well. And this is what I'm wanting to see, is that studies get done. And this again is where the provincial government could play an enormous role by helping scientists finance the research into proving or disproving cause and effect.
Yeah. Interesting question here from Edna. Doesn't Health Canada look at a vaccine as a one-time deal? Now it's on the 10th booster, so it's not a vaccine. And as was discussed at the injection event on Monday, the Health Canada, and it seems like all around the world, has changed the definition of a vaccine.
Yeah. Fundamentally, it has changed to simply state it may reduce symptoms.
Yes.
A vaccine, the original definition of a vaccine was one injection will prevent you from getting polio, will prevent you from getting measles, will prevent you from et cetera, et cetera. But then over many, many years, the occasional person developed measles again or chickenpox. And so hence the concept of a booster.
Yeah.
But in a lifetime, for the conventional vaccines, you probably only need one booster later in life.
And to me, that kind of makes sense. Didn't we learn in biology that our body changes all of its cells after 7 years or something like that?
Well, we're constantly replacing ourselves. I mean, through that. But the point that the last question made, in terms of 10 boosters, remember the important point that's been demonstrated now is that the greater number of boosters that you have,
that's right,
that you will contract the virus.
Yeah, that's right. And do you think it is because it's actually weakening the immune system, or like what do you think the reason is for that?
I think that may be part of it, but again, the details are sketchy as to why. So what we see is the correlation. What's the cause and effect? So this again is an example of why. Why is this happening?
Yeah. That makes sense. Just a few comments like, so why are people still taking them? Should we just ban this, get rid of it? We've kind of talked about that already.
People are taking it, Kerry, because honestly, they are uninformed, or they bought into a narrative in which it's been promoted so heavily. I have a dear friend who's had 6 shots, despite the fact that I've tried to advise him otherwise. And guess what? He developed Guillain-Barré syndrome. But was it cause and effect? Who knows?
And that's kind of what people are really questioning now, is whether or not, well, maybe they would have caught it anyways. Maybe it's in the air, and whether or not you had a vaccine or not, you're bound to catch it. And I don't know. To me, it just seems to be, again, I will definitely say I am not an immunologist, scientist at all, but just an observer. And the thing about in my situation is I talk to literally thousands of people, and this is a thing that a lot of people don't realize. A lot of people that are behind their screens may talk to their family, their friends, and maybe just a little bit of a wider circle. I'm in constant contact with people just through my business, and just for getting out to the events that we're at. The number of miles that I've driven in my vehicle in the last couple of years, as you can well imagine.
I know, Gary.
The stories that I've heard are just, they're all over the place. But there really seem to be one consistent variable in terms of when people get sick, or something is wrong with them. They've had to go to the hospital. And I think we all know what the answer is, and that seems to be that they've taken the vaccine, and for the most part, they don't seem to have an issue with it. And but from someone that's looking outside and having all these conversations with other people, I would question it. I would definitely question it. So.
Well, the reality is that the majority of people who have subjected themselves to a COVID-19 injection have not become deathly ill or died. But the problem is that the percentage of people who have been compromised is hundreds of times greater than if you take every vaccine in history and all of the complications and deaths from COVID-19. The complications and deaths are hundreds and hundreds of times greater than all of the rest combined. And the UK data shows all-cause mortality to be associated to have massively increased in the last 3 years. And why is that? Well, there's only one cause that could have done it, and that's the vaccine. So here's where we are. For me, I'm retired now. I try to maintain a sense of what's going on in the world, and when I see something that I may have an opportunity to influence, then it kind of gives me something to do. And when Adriana Lagrange asked me to look into the presence of plasmid DNA, the culmination of that is what you've published and what you've heard today. And you may want to, even in your in the newsletter, or I guess maybe, or on the website, you might want to also include the suggested additions as well.
Oh yeah, no. Now that I've seen that, oh, absolutely. And I mean, it makes perfect sense. Is when you're not asking for anything, totally out the window. These are just logical progressions to say, you know what, it's not going to stop transmission. It's not going to reduce this, may or may not. I guess is the way it is. Be in terms of severity of symptoms, and then you go down through it. And I think people do need to realize that before they take an injection. And again, it's to me it's simple logic, and it's the same thing as we say about being educated about the political process. If you're unaware, you're just not aware. And it's up to us as individuals to kind of get educated on that. And of course, then it opens up a whole what's the term I'm looking for? A whole shitload, a whole can of whoop ass, a whole
can of worms.
A can of worms for sure, because you just never know what that is going. So I'm hoping that AHS adopts this change, and hopefully it does what we're hoping it will, and people take a second look at it and say, you know what, I'm going to wait on this and see what's really going to happen in the next little bit. So,
well, we'll see.
Yes.
Stay tuned, I guess.
Well, thank you so much for all the work that you put into this, Dr. Modry. And again, you can always go on to the website, to the Alberta Prosperity Project.com, take a look at it. And I've said it a couple of times, I do advise people to at least take a look at it and send it out to your friends, family, the neighbor that you don't talk to, if you have his email address, her email address. Do it that way. And I think that's kind of where we're going to leave it for tonight. Okay. And thank you so much, Dennis. And but I did want to say, do you want to still stay on, or do you want to listen to me?
Go ahead. No, I can. What would you like?
All I was going to say. So next week we have. Of course, we do these every Wednesday, and next week we have our good friend and buddy, Mr. Christopher Scott on. Chris Scott, who's actually in the comments right now. Actually, I'll pull up his little comment here.
One of my favorite people.
seems to be a problem to me, but what do I know? I'm just a cook. So Chris is actually on his way. Actually, he's probably already, well, he is on the island, I'm sure. He is on the way to the We Unify Claim in Canada conference, and that's being held this weekend, June 21st, 23rd in Victoria. And you can find out more by going to, and I've got the website up on here as well. Let me just find it for a second. I believe it is just We Unify. There you go. WeUnify.ca 2024. I'll put that in the comments as well. That's where Chris is going to be. There's the idea behind it is really just to have panels of discussion on basically what's happened over the last few years. They've got the doctors, of course. Dr. Peter McCullough has been on the show before. Ray Bottichera. We've got Tamara Leach, Dre Humphrey from Rebel News, John Carpe, JCCF. We've like just tons and tons of people that are speaking, and there, of course, is Mr. Christopher Scott. I would advise anybody that's on the island or close to the island to take this in and just see what is being talked about there. They've got, like I said, panels. They've got who else was it that I wanted to bring up here? The Honorable Brian Peckford. And Chris is actually on the panel with Brian Peckford, as well as Art Pulowski and I believe Chris Barber and Tamara Leach at the same time too. So that's where he is going to be this weekend. And so next weekend, he's going to come back and tell us what he saw, what he heard, and basically give us a synopsis of our summary of what happened there. And Chris, did you make any comments? No, I didn't make any comments. I thought he But I'm looking forward to that. I would have liked to have done that as well. Unfortunately, it just didn't work out in the cards for me. There's also another event that's going on in Manitoba, a very similar one too. Unfortunately, I just don't have the info up on there, but you can always check it out too. Just look in Manitoba. It's kind of a similar thing. Our good friend Ken Drysdale from the NCI, he's putting that on as well. Shadow Davis is going to be one of the MC there, I believe. So, you know, if you're living kind of in Calgary or Regina, then you should be going Regina, Winnipeg, Calgary. You should be going out to the West Coast. But like I said, unfortunately, I won't be able to. So we're going to have Chris report back, and I'm anxious to hear what he says about that. Of course, the idea behind this is to educate people on independence and what basically what Alberta can do. And there's a strong argument for a lot of things that we're currently going through, and healthcare is definitely one of those things that is in our wheelhouse. And we should be talking with AHS and talking with our MLAs and our governments. I know just municipal governments as well. We just lost Dennis. That's okay. But and again, thank you guys for watching every single Wednesday when we do this. It's a pleasure for me to be able to bring you this knowledge. And you know, I just love doing this, despite the fact that it does eat up a Wednesday, eats up a lot of time. And I know our APP group, who have put out the newsletter, have requested that if somebody can help me out doing production or video editing, and even co-hosting. If you want to be a co-host with me, give me a call. Go to contact@albertaprosperity.com. I'll put that up on the page as well here, and then that way you can take a look at that. And there you go, just like this. See, someone could be doing that instead of me. And wouldn't it be a more professional show if we had someone else that was actually driving this instead of just me? So with that, you guys have an amazing night, and we will definitely talk to you next Wednesday, because we do this every Wednesday. Have a good night, everybody.